Welcome everyone to this session that we're going to talk about Microsoft Power BI. This will be an introduction to Power BI, and we will highlight the different components of Power BI. Before we get into Power BI, it's good to actually talk about business intelligence. That's really what Power BI has been designed for. So to understand the purpose of Power BI, we need to understand a little bit about business intelligence. So that's the first part that we will talk about. The second part is that we need to go into the different various components of Power BI. Power BI, naturally or usually people see it as made out of three separate components. Ultimately, there's actually more than that, but we'll talk about it in three main clusters of software and apps that's been bundled together. Under the Power BI, there's the desktop version, there is the service, Power BI service, and finally Power BI mobile. So we're going to go into that a little bit so that you understand the differences between the three of them. And third and last components of what we're going to talk about is the workflow, as well as an example of how you will tackle any data analytics project that you will come across. So we will talk about workflow as well as giving you an example of what it will look like. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. So let's look at the first part that we are interested in, which is business intelligence. So this portion here is really about business intelligence or introduction to business intelligence. What exactly is business intelligence? If you look up Wikipedia and a few definitions of business intelligence, it's really about combining business analytics, data mining, data visualization, data tools, as well as infrastructure. So this is really the best practices to help company or organizations to make more data-driven decisions, meaning evidence-based decision making. Your decision ought to be supported or make use or utilize evidence rather than based on your gut feel. Not that those are wrong, but since you are able to capture data or have data or evidence in front of you, it's better to make decisions using those data or evidence to back up the decision that you make. So in practice, what you usually do is that in modern business intelligence, when you have a comprehensive view of the organizational data, you can use that data to drive corporate change or changes, or eliminate any inefficiencies and redirect resources to areas where you feel that the company require more resources or may be able to get a better returns from, and ultimately allows you to quickly adapt to market changes or where there's any supply or demand changes. So this is a very important to note that this is a very modern definition of Power BI or BI for that matter. BI has a long history. In fact, it's quite a buzzword back in the days. In fact, it started around 1960s. And it keeps changing as and when the tools or understanding develops further and further. So in terms of modern BI, modern business intelligence, the solutions tends to prioritize a few things. The general flow in terms of where the development of the marketplace is such that it's shifted towards self-service analysis. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to do that. The reason being, ultimately, it's not some guys in the IT department or some guys who can code that will be able to make a decision in terms of what's best for the company. When it comes to business decision or organizational decision, it's still best to actually give it to the decision makers, such as senior management or executives like CEO, to use the data to inform them in terms of their decision. So hence the reason for self-service analysis. There's also prioritization that goes towards governing data on trusted platform. It's important to allow access only to those or to be granted access. It's not that, especially in today's world, data governance is really crucial. There is a need to manage who have access to the data. And the final two key components really is to empower business users and also providing a speed in terms of the ability to quickly gain insight from the general direction from the data flow or sales flow or whatever the business may be. So over the last few years, business intelligence has generally evolved to cover a lot of processes and activities to improve performance. Now, some of these I won't go into details. I'll just broad stroke describe them. So it covers data mining, which is machine learning, AI, using database to drive again business data-driven decision making. So there is the reporting in the form of dashboards, providing dashboards for the decision maker. Of course, there is also the performance matrix as well as benchmark as well, using historical data to give you a rough idea how the company is performing relative to historical data. Of course, you can't talk about analytics without starting from the foundational, which is descriptive analytics. Querying, which is extracting data from databases or various data sets. Of course, statistical analysis needs to be performed on the data that you have, so that you have some sort of descriptive data. Visualization as well, so that it communicates in a manner that is easier for a human to digest and allow decision maker to make sound decision as well. Visual analysis, meaning visual storytelling, and the final part really is preparation of the data, especially when it comes from multiple data sources, how to actually combine them to make proper decisions. All right, so let's look at common definitions of Power BI. If you go to the Microsoft, this is the Microsoft's own definition of Power BI. It really is a collection of software, services, apps, and connectors that work together to turn your unrelated sources of data into coherent, visually immersive, and interactive insights. The part about interactive, we already talked about that in a fair length. Really, that's where the self-service business intelligence part comes in. You provide the dashboard to the decision maker to allow them to cut and slice however way they like to help them to understand how the companies or organizations are performing. So that's really where the interactive insight comes in. The visually immersive part really is how do you create visuals that's best suited to present the information that you have at hand. It could be bar chart, it could be line graph, it could even be all sorts of some of the more modern word clouds, for example, to convey the message or the narrative that best summarize the underlying performance of the company. The first point here really is the unrelated sources of data, and this is where Power BI comes in on its own. It really has a lot of connectors which allows you to connect to either SQL and a whole lot of myriads of data sets. As and when we go into the Power BI itself, you will be able to see very quickly what they are. So where does Power BI comes in? And what we talked about earlier really is the introduction to business intelligence. We talked about all the different parts, and what Power BI is to fulfill all of those definitions that we talked about earlier. So let's dive in a little bit more about Power BI and their various components. And in one visual, I'll let you take it all in from this view here. You can very quickly see that Power BI has a lot of components. You have the desktop at the top, you have the BI services, which is browser based, you have the mobile apps, you have the gateway, which allows it to talk to another secure database, you have the embedded, which allows you to actually embed it either into your intranet or external website. For people who doesn't have Power BI accounts, they can actually just basically play with the data. Quite often you'll see this in newspaper, which when they actually posted their visuals of some findings or something that they've performed analysis on, to allow their reader to actually play around with the data. Of course, right now, the in thing, I shouldn't call it in thing, right now, a prime example would be the likes of WHO. If you go to the website, you can see how each country is performing in terms of the COVID-19 statistics. You have the report server. Power BI Premium is for those who wanted to actually collaborate with each other. Desktop is only for individual. If you have Premium, then your whole enterprise will be able to share the dashboard or the data to collaborate on the report together. And also There is the Visual Marketplace. This works a little bit like the App Store or Apple App Store or the Android App Store as well. That allows you to actually make use of apps that third party has created and post it onto the Power BI Marketplace. So with that, I'm going to stop right here. This is really the portion on introduction of business intelligence. When we come back, we'll go into a little bit more about Power BI desktop services and mobile, and the later video about the workflow itself.